On June 12th, 1977, 3 young Girl Scouts, 8-year-old Lori Lee Farmer, 9-year-old Michelle Heather Gus, and 10-year-old Doris Denise Milner arrived at Camp Scott in Mays County, Oklahoma, for what was supposed to be 2 weeks of summer fun. They were assigned to the most remote tent on the property. It was their first night at camp. None of them would ever go home. Camp Scott sat in dense woods near Locust Grove, Oklahoma, about 40 miles from Tulsa, with cabins, trails, and tent units spread across a large area. The camp had been operating for 49 years. It was the kind of place that parents trusted completely, surrounded by trees and counselors and the wholesome rituals of summer camp life. But something was already wrong before the girls even arrived. Less than 2 months before the murders, during an on-site training session for camp staff, a counselor reported that her belongings had been disturbed and food had been taken. Someone had been inside the camp, moving through it undetected. That report was noted and then quietly set aside. On the evening of June 12th, the 3 girls sought shelter from a thunderstorm in their tent. That night, Counselor Carla Wilhite was awakened by a strange sound in the middle of the night, a guttural moaning coming from the main road through camp. After investigating briefly, she concluded it was probably just an animal and returned to bed. That decision would haunt her for decades. The next morning, on her way to the shower house, Wilhite made a horrible discovery. Spotting 3 sleeping bags oddly strewn about 150 feet into the woods, she approached. It was horribly clear almost immediately that 10-year-old Doris was dead. Seeing her corpse atop her sleeping bag led the counselor to run for help, believing an accident had occurred. Only with the camp director and nurse in tow did the full truth emerge, as the other bags were unzipped to yield more bodies. All 3 girls had been taken from their tent during the storm. Tape, rope, a gag, and a flashlight were collected from the victims and the scene. It was determined that 2 of the girls had been struck and killed in the tent, and that 1 had been taken into the woods. The cause of death was strangulation. The medical examiner confirmed all 3 had been assaulted before they were killed. The investigation that followed was one of the largest in Oklahoma history. Hundreds of law enforcement officers descended on the small town of Locust Grove. The community was devastated. Parents across the state pulled their children from summer camps, and investigators began building a case around a name that kept surfacing in the evidence. Jean Leroy Hart was a local jail escapee with a documented history of rape and violence who had been living as a fugitive in the area since 1973. He was well known to local Cherokee community members, some of whom had been sheltering him in the years since his escape. Physical evidence linked him to the scene. Hair samples recovered from the sleeping bags were consistent with his hair. A flashlight found at the crime scene was later connected to a man who claimed he had loaned it to Hart, and that same man, a friend named Dwayne Peters, claimed that Hart had admitted the killings to him in October 1977, just months after the murders. Hart was eventually located and arrested after an extensive manhunt. The trial began in 1979 and drew national attention. The prosecution presented hair evidence, witness testimony, and physical connections between Hart and the crime scene. The defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that the hair analysis was unreliable, and that the community had rushed to judgment against a Cherokee man who was being made a scapegoat. Ultimately, a jury of 6 men and 6 women deliberated for just 5 minutes before finding Jean Leroy Hart innocent on March 30th, 1979. He died of a heart attack on June 4th, 1979, just months after his acquittal. Whatever he knew died with him. But the story didn't end there. In 1989, DNA testing of semen samples found at the scene showed that 3 of the 5 probes matched Hart's DNA. For many investigators and the victims' families, this felt like confirmation of what they had believed all along. But Hart was already dead. No charges could be filed, no justice could be served, and because he had been acquitted, double jeopardy meant no trial could ever have taken place even if he had still been alive. 9 years ago, Lori Farmer's parents sat down with Mays County Sheriff Mike Reed and asked him to take a new look at the case. They had no idea what he and investigators would uncover. Recent DNA testing conducted by the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation produced results that investigators say point conclusively to one killer and rule out every other suspect ever brought up in the case. That suspect is Gene Leroy Hart. But because Hart died in 1979, the case remains officially and permanently unsolved. No conviction will ever be entered. No sentence will ever be served. There are those who still question whether Hart acted alone or whether he acted at all. Some members of the Cherokee community have maintained for decades that Hart was the wrong man, that the evidence was manipulated, and that the real killer was never identified. The 5-minute deliberation that led to his acquittal has been cited by both sides, by those who believe it proved the evidence was weak, and by those who believe it proved that racial bias in favor of a Cherokee man in a Cherokee community overrode the physical evidence entirely. Camp Scott shuttered its gates after the murders and never welcomed anyone again. The trails are overgrown now, the tents are gone, but the families of Lori Farmer, Michelle Guse, and Doris Milner have never stopped seeking acknowledgement of what happened to their daughters on their first night at summer camp. 3 little girls went to sleep during a thunderstorm and never woke up. And the person who stood over their tent in the dark that night has never faced a single day in prison. What do you think happened? Drop your theory in the comments. And if you want more cases like this, subscribe to Mystery Minute. We'll be here every week digging up the truth.